Okay,
There we go.
sweet. So I was curious, is it Amelia? Amalia? Am I saying that wrong, Liz?
I'm Aaliyah, but that's
Amalia. Oh my gosh, my brain.
no, it's totally fine.
I,
Um,
I'm
she's
curious.
having internet issues too, it looks like, so she may or may not be able to go off mute.
Okay, cool. What chapter are you she from? I
She's
just
Northwest Straits, so up in Bellingham.
cool. I was just wanting to see like where you guys are all from.
Kath-
Um
Kathy is our beach cleanup coordinator for the South Sound chapter. So we got 4 chapters represented. Heck yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome, thank you. Well, yeah, so my name is Carla Avila Martinez. I'm the Climate Action Program Manager for the Surfrider Foundation. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm just really excited to share more about the program and the resources we have and the steps that you guys can take to implement this program with your chapter if it's something that interests you. And there is like a lot of information to cover. So I might go pretty fast, but again, feel free to stop me if you have any questions. The Climate Action Program supports chapters across the country to participate in and lead restoration efforts in your communities to enhance coastal resilience. And really, the Climate Action Program helps fight climate change through nature-based solutions to mitigate and to adapt to the impacts of climate change. So we're doing a lot of work at the Climate Action Program. And so the program officially launched earlier this year in Miami. We had an event with the Miami chapter. They've been doing dune restoration work for over 20 years. And so they're really they have a lot of expertise and a lot of experience in doing dune restoration, leading these efforts. So we thought it was a great opportunity to meet up with them and see them at work doing this dune restoration work. And so, although this is a new program, as I just shared, we're not strangers to restoration efforts. We have led and participated in hundreds of restoration events, planted over 500,000 plants, and engaged thousands of volunteers throughout the 20 plus past years. And so we're not strangers, but now with the Climate Action Program, chapters will have my support and HQ support to enhance and expand these efforts if this is something that's of interest to you. And so, although that it we have like 500,000 plants that I was able to count that I was able to find. This number is actually likely higher. This is just a number that I was able to put together from like social media posts and blogs and news. I almost said newspaper clippings, but not clippings, online articles. And so this likely, again, number is higher, but we weren't really capturing this data before. But with this program, we will be able to, and so we will be able to tell our full story. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the reasons why the Climate Action Program was identified as a priority for Surfrider. It's not, we're not, I'm sure none of us here are strangers to climate change and to the effects of climate change. And our coasts are facing multiple threats, and climate change is amplifying those effects. But there are steps that we can take with nature-based solutions to mitigate climate change and adapt to the effects. And so last year was the warmest year since global records began in 1850. And unfortunately, this year is looking like we're going to beat that record. And I don't have to tell you how climate change will impact Washington. I'm sure you're already experiencing a lot of the effects. It's evident by all the headlines and just all the different extreme weather events that are happening around Washington and the country and the world that these like extreme unprecedented events are becoming a regular thing. And so we are already experiencing the impacts of climate change. Sea level rise is already posing significant threats to coastal ecosystems. Um, coastal development and ecosystems are both being impacted. Coastal erosion is increasingly impacting homes and properties and ecosystems, while flooding also threatens critical infrastructure and wetlands and other coastal ecosystems, which are essential for birds and fish, are at risk of being of disappearing as waters levels rise, and these ecosystems are being squeezed between rising seas and the coastal development. So this is providing, or this is reducing and eliminating the space that these coastal ecosystems can move inland to, and a lot of these beaches are and coastal ecosystems are disappearing. But beaches want to move. Beaches are naturally dynamic and they change over time. Erosion is a natural process. And healthy beaches will move inland where they have the space to, but in many areas, again, the retreat is blocked by coastal infrastructure, resulting in beach loss. And hard armoring is one of those culprits that's resulting in the loss of our beaches, but not just hard armoring, but other types of human development, such as like jetties and other things like that, are causing some of the loss of our beaches. And so our coasts are particularly vulnerable to also to acidification. Um, and this is causing problems for shellfish, plankton, and the marine food web. For example, oyster hatcheries are becoming less productive and young salmon are becoming impacted because they rely on this plankton and shellfish to survive. And so these rising temperatures are a concern because they're contributing to a more acidic ocean and also causing toxic algal blooms, lots of bad things. And I'm sure again that most of you guys are familiar with these impacts. So there is a lot of work to do to enhance coastal ecosystems to make them more resilient against these impacts of climate change. And we're doing this again with nature, really supporting and restoring nature to be able to protect itself. And again, Surfrider has prioritized action on climate change, and we are doing this through many different ways. We're working with elected officials, doing education with communities. We're working with local communities to plan for sea level rise, advocating for stronger climate policies, as well as this is where the Climate Action Program falls under is the supporting coastal habitat restoration and blue carbon efforts. So this right here is where the Climate Action Program falls under. And although we are clearly working on climate change under our Coast and Climate Initiative, we are also doing this work through our other initiatives as well, through our plastic pollution work, our ocean-friendly gardens, as well as under our Ocean Protection Initiative, fighting offshore oil drilling. We need to end our reliance on fossil fuels and move towards renewable energy. And it's going to take every tool in the toolbox to help mitigate and adapt to the impacts of climate change. And so the Climate Action Program is one of those tools. And so again, the Climate Action Program will really focus on restoration efforts along our coasts, or if you're a little more inland, we're totally will be supporting more inland restoration too, because we know that what happens upstream affects downstream, and it's all connected. And so we're really wanting to support our chapters within any kind of restoration work that you guys are interested in leading. And so again, restoration efforts are some of the most impactful and accessible actions that we can take in the face of climate change. Through restoration work, we can enhance the ecosystem's capacity to absorb more carbon, so mitigating the impacts of climate change, but also supporting biodiversity and buffer communities against the impacts of climate change along the coast. And so really every action from installing native plants to removing invasive species in wetlands contributes to a more sustainable and resilient environment. I just wanted to show a little bit of the work here in Puerto Rico. This picture in the middle, was taken around 2021, about 3 or 4 years after Hurricane Maria, that did a lot of damage to Puerto Rico. This particular area was a mangrove forest, but as you can see, it's kind of like a graveyard of forest. There's not You can't really see any thriving or any really growing mangroves here. And it wasn't regenerating on its own because the way that mangroves reproduce or like repopulate themselves is they have these little propagules that they grow in their trees, and then they fall in the water and they float away and they establish themselves. Um, and then they start growing. But because so much of the mangroves were destroyed, so in this particular area in Isabela, 95% plus of the mangroves were um, just decimated. And so there wasn't enough of that local seed bank to regenerate. And so the Surfrider chapter and the community worked together to start collecting these propagules and start doing restoration. And then here you can see that the mangroves are growing back. And so it's been in a really successful project. There's still a lot of work to do, but just wanted to highlight one example of what community restoration can do. And so the heart of the climate action program, again, is really focused on nature-based solutions and working with nature to protect nature. And this is not a new concept. Indigenous nations have been working with nature for millennia and advocating for this to continue and be the norm. But more recently, this nature-based solution approach to coastal resilience has finally been uplifted and supported around the world. There's a lot of funding out there supporting nature-based solutions and living shorelines for coastal and climate resilience. So it really is, it's hot right now. And I hope it continues to stay hot because we definitely need as much funding as possible to continue these projects. Again, nature-based solutions are approaches to addressing environmental challenges by harnessing the power of nature. And so this really involves restoring the natural processes. So if a coastal dune is covered in invasive species, it's not able to function as it normally would. For example, I didn't mention this. I live in Eureka, California. I'm in Northern California, so just like I like to consider us the bottom tip of the Pacific Northwest, but might be debatable. But there are some similarities, and so there's coastal dunes here that are completely covered in beach grass. Again, which is an invasive species. I have a picture that I'll show in a little bit, but it really changes the way that the local dunes function, and so it actually reduces the ability of the dune to provide protection for coastal communities, but and also obviously it really impacts local native plants and animals that rely on this healthy ecosystem that they've evolved to survive and thrive in for forever. And so I'll talk a little bit more about those dunes in just a second. Um, so again, healthy ecosystems really naturally have that resilience to better withstand and adapt to the impacts of climate change, benefiting both people and nature. And so restoring degraded ecosystems can enhance carbon sequestration, help us avoid armoring, reduce flood risk, improve water quality, protect coastal communities, stabilize shorelines, reduce the urban heat effect, enhance climate resilience, and so much more. So nature-based solutions are absolutely incredible. So this is why it's super critical to do this work, especially right now. And I didn't mention this before, but nature-based solutions have like three pillars, like three main pillars of work. So the first is conservation, then it's sustainable management, and then restoration. So of course, ideally we would have protected these areas so they don't need restoration as the frontline first thing to do. So conservation is incredibly important, ensuring that we're sustainably managing our lands. And then as like a final um, like what we have to do and if they're degraded or destroyed is we want to restore these areas. And so living shorelines are like a type of restoration. And so living shorelines and restoration is preferable to hard armoring and beach nourishment because in the long run, it will be more cost effective and also restoration, you're restoring an area back to its natural state. Um, and so naturally it'd be less, it's more self-sustaining and requires less maintenance over time. Although sometimes those upfront costs can be a little higher than hard armoring. Really, in the long run, it's the most cost-effective option and really the best option for people and nature. Because hard armoring will continue to require maintenance, and of course, it removes the sand. It starves the beaches from sand, and so it really it destroys beaches. Um, and so I wanted to share a little bit of what that looks like. So here we have just an example community with as coastal armoring. And you can see here that at a natural beach, the waves, again, it's natural. They're gonna come up and down and uh, the waves are going to be different between the spring and the winter. So our beaches are incredibly dynamic. They're made to move. They want to move. But once they're armored, for example, here, it stops that natural movement. And here this wave is, hitting this hard armoring and the sand isn't able to move as fast or move at all. And so it starts this scouring and the sand, the sand is erodes away, and then we're like kind of down to the cobble area. And so the beach starts disappearing. This was the example that I wanted to share of a native dune system versus a dune system that's invasively vegetated. This was a week after a big storm. And you can see they're both scoured, or they both have some scarping. And about 2 years later, you can see that the natively vegetated, healthy dune system has already completely healed up. You can't even tell there was a storm versus the invasively vegetated one where you can still see some of the scars from the scarping. And this is because, again, this invasive species is not allowing for the dune to naturally move. And it's really holding tight onto the sand and not allowing for that free movement. Here are some examples of habitats that are going to be critical to restore. It's not a comprehensive list, but ones that we anticipate will be most common. And so coastal dunes are incredibly important. And unfortunately, a majority of them have been degraded or destroyed whether through coastal development and invasive species. Um, they're definitely in need of restoration. And healthy coastal dunes, again, provide this natural buffer against storms, preventing coastal flooding, as well as providing ecological habitat. And so restoring dunes wherever possible will be critical to climate resilience. And then I wanted to also mention that the type of restoration will really be looked different depending on where you live and what types of projects that you're interested in doing. Another type of restoration is riparian habitat restoration, and that's that area along creeks and streams and rivers that help, that's just like that buffer zone right along the creek that helps shade the creek or provide wood for the creek. And so a lot of riparian areas also have been significantly damaged historically, again, from development, logging, roads, agriculture, grazing. All of this has led to the degradation of riparian areas. And just like healthy coastal dunes, healthy riparian areas enhance water quality, they stabilize stream banks and reduce erosion, and can slow down the speed of floodwaters too. Another type of habitat, this has multiple habitats. So blue carbon habitats are another type of ecosystem that we anticipate working in. And so blue carbon refers to the carbon dioxide that's stored in the coastal and marine ecosystem specifically. So like mangroves and salt marshes and seagrasses and really any coastal wetland. would fall under that blue carbon habitat. And although these ecosystems only cover about 2% of like the ocean surface, they account for 50% of the ocean's carbon absorption. So they are incredibly in, efficient at sequestering and storing carbon. And for example, mangroves and salt marshes both can store 3 to 5 times more carbon per equivalent area than a tropical rainforest. And they can also sequester carbon at a rate 10 times higher than tropical rainforests. So salt marshes, wetlands, mangrove forests, they are absolutely incredible, and we have to conserve them and restore them wherever we can. And again, because of this high sequestration ability, they help us also mitigate the impacts of climate change because they're able to absorb all this carbon and store it. And so, and just like dunes and just like riparian areas, unfortunately, a lot of wetlands have been destroyed. They've been turned into agricultural fields or developed for housing or businesses. So a lot of them have been destroyed, and there are even communities that live in former wetlands that have no idea that they live in former wetlands, or maybe they do because they probably experience a lot of flooding. But so this is why it's super going to be critical to also restore wetlands. And so I wanted to, oh, go for it.
Carla, it says, Kathy asked, how do eelgrass beds compare?
You'll They are also like seagrasses are also incredible at sequestering carbon. So they fall under that blue carbon. I don't think that exact the 3 to 5 and the time stored and the 10 times higher. I'm not 100% sure if that applies to seagrasses, but they are part of the blue carbon ecosystem or habitat. So they 100% are also incredible at sequestering carbon. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I know they are up there for sure.
I'm pretty sure they're just shy. They're like a little bit below salt marshes and mangroves, but they're up there for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely, it's just like slightly below, which is already like an incredible number. Like being slightly below mangroves is not a bad place to be. So yes, they are also magical, honestly, and the way that they can sequester carbon. And so I wanted to talk about different types of restoration work. So we have like big R restoration, which is large scale projects that can take years of planning, coordination, lots of heavy equipment. And so these are just bigger earth moving types of projects, but there are also smaller, like little R restoration that are, more accessible to volunteers and to weekend events, where volunteers can come and do some native planting or invasive species removal. And sometimes these restoration projects, you could have a little R and a big R all in one. For example, this big R restoration project up here, although you can see there's a lot of earth moving happening, they did have a volunteer planting day event, so they can mix sometimes, but sometimes bigger restoration projects don't have opportunities for volunteers. And then you also can have just a little R restoration event. So just wanted to share that with you that it can look very differently depending on the type of project you're working on, the type of project you want to work on, and the capacity of your chapter. So just wanted to share a little bit of the main tasks that the project will look like or the program will look like, and that'll be native planting and invasive species removal. But we're here to support those bigger R restoration projects. If that is something that, you're interested in, we work together, identify a site, and start developing that project. Here are some examples of other restoration efforts at Surfrider. This was in Ohio, the Northern Ohio chapter. They partnered with the local state park, and they went out and removed invasive species from the estuary. And this was a pretty easy lift for the chapter, or has been a pretty easy lift for the chapter because they partner on a couple events every month. The state parks provides the kayaks, the safety vests. I know they're called PFDs, personal flotation devices. And they go out and they kayak and they remove this frog bit species that's right here that's super invasive. So this is a good example of an easy lift restoration project if there's something similar like that in Washington. This is a mangrove restoration in Puerto Rico. I talked a little bit about that earlier. Um, we've been doing restoration work there for a few years now, like 3 or 4 years, and it's been really amazing to see the change in the area. And so this is a bigger restoration project. So this is an example of that like big R restoration. This is Surfers Point in California. This particular area. Um, had a bike path built on it and as well as a parking lot. And in fact, Surfrider tried to fight against this development, but unfortunately lost. And then not surprisingly, once the bike path was built, um, a lot of that erosion started to happen, a lot of that loss of sand started to happen, and the beach was slowly disappearing. And so Surfrider became the advocate to move this bike path more inland and to move the parking lot more inland. And they were successful. It took a very long time, it took like 20 years from like around 20 years from the start of the advocacy work to when this first phase of the project was done. But it has been incredibly successful. This site is incredibly resilient against in storms, and we've had a larger storms in the last few years, and it's been really successful and resilient, and it has bounced back after those storms. We have Dune Restoration New Jersey, and we've got lots of restoration examples in other areas. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, again, the impact of this work that we have done and are supporting. So this is Asbury Park in New Jersey. This is a storm surge during Hurricane Sandy. You can see that a lot of that water came inland, and Asbury Park does not have coastal dunes at all in front of their boardwalk and their coast. They have no dunes, but just a town over or a couple towns over, Asbury Park is right here. Um, they do have dunes, and a lot of these dunes were implemented by Surfrider chapter volunteers. You can see the difference in the storm surge. It was not as dramatic, and in fact, Bradley Beach had very little damage, and they only had like a few $1 million in damage versus Asbury Park had, I think, over $50 million in damages. So even though they're super close to each other, the effects of the hurricane were really different, and coastal dunes played a huge part in that. And the Jersey Shore chapter had a huge part in that too. And so restoration opportunities in Washington, again, will look very different depending on where you live. There may be dune restoration, wetland, living shorelines, kelp, eelgrass, and riparian restoration. And here are some different collaboration opportunities. I looked up different organizations along the different chapter areas that have restoration opportunities and have volunteer opportunities. So these are different organizations that if your chapter is interested, we can connect with and start developing an event, or we could attend one of their events and start developing that relationship. But we could also start and implement our own projects. And so now I want to go to how to get started. So can you guys see the chapter net? Yes, cool. So I just wanted to show you guys where the resources are. It's on ChapterNet under resources programs. I always miss it, climate action program. And there's links to different tools, but all of these tools live in this link too. So this is the resources folder. There's tons of resources in here, the toolkits in here, and that's where it'd be a good place to start. Some planning resources, more information on collecting data, but I don't think we're there yet, so we can go over the restoration data collection later, but the link is in here. um, program roles, one pagers, case studies, and then a project folder. So I'll just go through the toolkit pretty quickly. So this toolkit has a lot of good information about the program, more information on nature-based solutions, um, why coastal restoration is important to climate action, and then a brief summary of different types of coastal restoration habitats, and restoration, um, what restoration can look like for each one. So we have coral, kelp, living shorelines, mangroves, riparian restoration. We also have ocean-friendly gardens in here, because they are like mini restoration projects. So this is a great tool to look through, to get even more familiar with the program if you're interested in learning more. We have some information on environmental justice because we really want to make sure chapters are thinking about where we're working and where we are planning to do our restoration work and ensure that communities aren't being impacted negatively, or that we are working in communities that maybe don't normally see this type of work and would benefit from restoration. We also have tribal engagement here. We want to ensure that we're reaching out and meaningfully consulting and working with tribes. Um, Depending on where you are. I know Washington tribal nations have a big presence, and so I imagine this would be a good place to reach out and connect on any potential projects that maybe we want to lead or engage in. And another opportunity too, I know Pete and Liz and we have talked that there are projects that a lot of tribal nations are leading, and so that's maybe there's an opportunity we can reach out and see how we can support their work. And so here we have the difference or the steps on how to get started. So step one is what we're doing right now, learn about the program. Step two, within your chapter, think about your capacity, what you're interested in. Um, is there someone in your chapter that is really familiar with the plan? So just really thinking about those things with your chapter so you have a better understanding of what types of projects and what types of sizes of projects that you are able to work on. Step three would be identifying a location. But then it says here, if you don't have a location and want help identifying one, then you could skip to the next step, because that's also why I'm here. I'm here to help support, find projects, connect to projects, and do what it takes to get a project to implementation and where we can start supporting with volunteers. The next step is filling out the intake form. Oh, something I didn't mention, there are a couple of questions here that if you answer yes to any of them, the site that you're maybe are thinking about would benefit from restoration. Then we would all meet together. If you had a site in mind, I would have done some research on the site and we would talk about your goals and discuss feasibility for the project and then next steps. And then also a step along the way would be helpful to identify a climate action program chapter lead. That way we have someone to connect with and someone to help lead on the ground. The next step would be developing a restoration plan. And again, I'm going to be helping with this. This is what it looks like. We won't go through it, but there's a lot of good information here to fill out. And then the goal at the end of this is that we'd have a good restoration project planned out. Then step eight, we implement the restoration plan. And there are lots of links along the way that have different resources. So here is connecting with local organizations, funding the event, securing permits. But again, I'm here to support through all those tasks. So I can help find funding, I can help secure permits. And then step nine is leading the event. Step 10, measuring the impact with the restoration data collection form. And then step 11 is celebrating achievements. So that's the toolkit. There's lots of information in there. And so I just wanted to go through that. A lot of, I think the rest of this information is somewhat similar to what was in the toolkit. Again, yeah, we have climate action program resources. The best way to access it is through the ChapterNet webpage, or you can pin the Google Drive into your Google Drive or save it, and then you'll have easier access. I'm here to support in lots of different ways. Again, helping navigate the whole process from beginning to end. Depending on the type of project, it can take years. And so it's just, that's something that I'm here to help support along the way. The chapter lead, it'll be helpful to have a like appointed person from each chapter that wants to help with climate action program projects. Again, we have a data collection form that will be really critical to fill out. So we are telling our full story. There's some resources on how to fill out the form, and some tips on how to collect data. And then, so some program next steps is to, within your chapter, think about what interests you. This is a program that you'd like to implement and thinking about capacity, filling out that intake form. And then we would meet with either the people that are interested in, or I can meet with the whole chapter too. And so that are the next steps. But I did want to talk about a specific area. So I'm going to bring this back. So going back to like coastal development and coastal erosion and thinking about different types of projects. I know that Liz and Peter, you guys shared this with me. And I just wanted to share this time lapse of this particular area. And so you guys can, and I'm sure you guys probably know this. This is in the Great Harbor area, Grays Harbor area. So I just want to show this really quick because I was looking at it and you can see here the absolutely impressive or scary changes that have happened in the area. And I've been getting more familiar with the impacts and the causes of what's potentially happening here. And so I know there's a lot of interest in doing work in this area to enhance coastal resilience and find solutions. And so this is a type of project that we have been thinking about and talking about. I know, Liz, you are guys meeting with like city staff, and so just wanted to share just a particular area, within Washington that, is seeing a lot of erosion and changes due to human activity, but also climate change. And so this particular area, it'll involve a lot of working different landowners, getting feasibility studies and design studies. So this is one of those like big R restoration projects. And I don't know if Liz or Pete, you guys had anything you'd like to add to that? No? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. I was just like going up and down the coast here earlier today and was just like shocked at the changes that have been happening. Um, and how much of the beaches are being lost and eroded. And then in each area, it's very different, or not very different, but there's different causes in each area. And so, it's again something that we're wanting to support to enhance, this resilience and ensure that we have beaches in 100 years. And so with that, I'll just say thank you. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know.
That was awesome. I love that time lapse. Thank you for putting that together. I'm gonna do that for other places for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, no, it's just on Google Earth. You can just put the time lapse on, turn the time lapse on, and yeah, I honestly probably spent too long this morning going through each area. And then again, as like I was saying earlier, beaches are meant to move, and um that's a totally normal thing for erosion to happen, but there's definitely areas where the causes are hard armoring or things that we can control and change and restore so it can, be a healthier coast.
Very cool.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carlos. It's awesome. I,
Yeah.
I just kind of want to highlight that there's so many different scales at which, I think we could probably apply this work. There's like the massive industrial scale where we're like, potentially bringing in big partners like the Army Corps or Department of Ecology. But then there's like so many other smaller projects, that I think that could just mean like a few volunteers going out to a favorite trailhead and taking out invasive species or just maybe communicating with local landowners like why they shouldn't put giant rocks in front of their house that you walk and maybe, there's some better solutions like aggregated gravel and various plants. Um, I'm kind of curious to hear if any of our chapter folks, if any of you guys have any ideas that this spurred, like in your neighborhoods, towns, or beaches. Um, yeah, anything?
Well, um, this is Kathy. I'm from South Sound. I'm a retired middle school science teacher. And something that I did with my students, I was really fortunate. We partnered with uh, Metro Parks in Tacoma to do geocaching, but every Friday we would stay out for 2 hours instead of one. And whatever park we were at, we did a service learning project there. So sometimes it was invasives removal, sometimes it was planting, native species, sometimes it was, fixing a path. But we were, you can partner with with, with like the park department is a great thing to partner with. You say, hey, I got some people willing to come out and remove invasives, you know, and they generally want to accommodate you because they can use all the help they can get.
Mhm.
And the other thing is like the conservation districts in your area. I've also done a ton of work with Pierce Conservation District and the conservation districts, like they will provide native plants. If somebody has a project that they're working on and they want to plant an area with native species, they have a system where you apply to them to get plants for that area, and they generally will give them to you because they do native plant sales. I know that Kitsap County and Pierce County do them. I don't know about other counties, but and they always have tons extra. I mean, and like and another thing, like in Tacoma, they're doing a lot of work on the tree canopy, and they did this whole heat. Uh, they did a thing in August where they went around and checked the temperatures in all these neighborhoods to see, how much hotter they were where there's no trees, so that they can target getting these places replanted. So there's like Tacoma Tree Foundation has they have stuff going on all the time. So there's, if you look around, there's things like that to get started, rather than jumping into doing some huge thing to partner with some of these people and get some of the surf riders people out working at some of their things. I mean, we're going out next month on the boarding trail up in by South Prairie and helping to plant native species along there. So, there's so many opportunities like that and I just think, starting small is probably a good idea. So looking for opportunities you can piggyback with
Mhm.
it probably will help people be more successful from the get-go.
Yeah, definitely. Like you
That's
said, there's not a shortage of work, uh, but and all, like you were saying, there's a lot of organizations that are already doing this work and they're limited by the people power and volunteers. So that's definitely somewhere where we, as Surfrider, we have a lot of volunteer power and we can help fill in those gaps. So definitely envision us partnering and speeding up some of the work that's already happening.
Can I jump in too? Because Carla, I appreciate you putting out like ideas around the state that you found. And sort of along the lines of Kathy, you're sharing, I'm curious, like I get the King County noxious weeds like report, but I've only like looked at it for like my yard, you know, around my house and my neighborhood. But I'm curious, I'm guessing King County has invasive species projects or things as well. And I love the idea of like looking more into that and maybe doing an event or, you know, a series or partnership with some work that's already happening. So I really appreciate you putting King County on there and then Kathy sharing as well, because it's like, ooh, that could be cool to look into. Um, so thank you very much. But that's in our area, I feel like bandwidth of folks. um, so like a smaller project might be a good place to start, but I'm stoked. I'd like to research and try to figure out like an event or something already going on that maybe we can help bring more folks to and awareness around.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I've done for other chapters, is, put together like even like a more detailed version of, I mean, I just showed pictures of different of like logos of different organizations, but I can put together like an informational sheet with different organizations and like upcoming volunteer opportunities, or if they don't have upcoming volunteer opportunities, like, information for us to reach out to them. So that's something, yeah, I'm here to support. So I can put together like a list of like maybe five opportunities, and then we could go through them and see what interests you. And then I could help with doing the outreach, or you're welcome to do the outreach too. And so that's something that I can help kickstart this work.
Eleanor, do you have any ideas for rest? I know you're a lot more involved in that kind of restoration arena. I just was curious if any areas came to mind up in Beeham.
I feel like a lot of it's already been covered. I was just gonna type into the chat box that Orca Recovery Day is coming up on October 19th that a lot of the conservation districts are involved in. And I know somebody else mentioned conservation districts, but that's a potential partnership to start growing. Um, yeah, we've worked with our city of Bellingham off and on over the years and done like lagoon plantings and stuff like that. And they're usually super excited to help us out with that and have us help them with that. I mean, there's so much opportunity out there. It's really just kind of, I think this is a really great way to also build partnerships and be able to do a lot more beyond just, doing plantings and foster those relationships that so that you can get more done for your chapter and help protect our oceans, waves, and beaches.
Yeah. That's awesome, Eleanor. Did you do that like with the Surfrider chapter, or was that with like a different organization?
The lagoon planting, I don't remember what year that was, but that was through our Surfrider chapter. We also did a beach cleanup too at the same time.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So for events that we're partnering with or we're not the lead, we'd still ideally like to capture that data. And like on the form, I didn't share it, but there is a space where we would put whoever the lead is. So it's not like we're not taking credit, we're saying we're giving credit, but we're just wanting to capture like where volunteers are helping and where we're partnering. And so we know like where we're making an impact. Um, any other places coming to mind, or any other questions or concerns? or funny jokes.
Covered all.
I'm
Awesome.
excited to do this work. I want to get outside and do some, get my hands dirty and get some volunteers taking care of some of our places.
My soft computer typing hands? No way. No way.
You're gonna get cat.
Well, I'm also you're making sorry, Pete, you just made me think of this for some reason, but I like we've talked about like opportunities to partner with other chapters on something. And so like because we're sorry, my kiddo's right here. Um uh we're like in the Seattle area, and obviously there's like Sound Coast and different waterways here in Seattle, but like how cool would it be if there was something going on the peninsula or somewhere, Bellingham or somewhere else where we could do like a like multiple chapter, like all hands on deck type of event or project. Like that could be cool too. um
There
I'd
might
be into figuring something out like that.
there might be something in Westport at some point because the erosion there's gotten really bad. So and we don't really have a chapter there really yet, so could be something on the horizon. But that's a great idea, is to find a project somewhere cool. We can all use that as an excuse to go travel to the coast. Yeah, and Western Washington University, yeah, has done some cool stuff. That's good to note. Thank you, Eleanor.
There's definitely lots of opportunities like universities, working with schools. Yeah, and also there's so much work to be done that I don't think we'll run out of it in our lifetime. So there's lots of work to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to all of you for taking an hour out of your evening, and to Carla for all the awesome information and all the amazing toolkits and resources that you've built from scratch. I know that's been an effort for you, so shout out there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it's been great. And if you guys are interested, like Morgan, I was sharing, I could put together an informational sheet. Definitely reach out, and that's something that I could do for your chapter if that sounds like a good next step.
Yeah, and definitely if anything comes up that, strikes y'all's fancies or you're curious about, just like hit us up and we can go from there.
Yeah.